The night my wife died, the house fell silent in a way I had never known before. 40 years of marriage, 40 years of laughter, arguments, love, and struggle. Gone in a single breath. She was the glue that bound us, the balance that softened my stern ways. Without her, the walls felt like strangers, and the silence was not peace, but a weight. My children came, of course. They cried at the funeral, stood beside me in black, hugged me with arms that felt stiff, mechanical. I told myself it was grief that made them cold. I wanted to believe that, but soon after we laid her in the ground, I began to see the truth. Her absence had not broken them, it had freed them. They stopped calling me Dad with warmth. They stopped asking how I was holding up. Instead, they whispered about the will, the house, the savings, the land she and I had built together. They circled me like wolves who had caught the scent of blood. Matthew, the oldest, was always ambitious, restless. He spoke to me first. "Dad," he said, voice too calm, "you can't handle all this alone anymore. The house, the finances, let us take over. You should relax." Relax. That word cut me like a knife. Sarah, the middle child, always calculating, added, "Mom would have wanted us to help. You've worked hard enough. Why not sign things over? We'll make sure everything runs smoothly." And then David, the youngest, brash and careless, smirked. "Yeah, Dad, why hang on to all this? You're old. We're the future. Let us handle it." I stared at them, my grief curdling into something darker. They weren't here to comfort me. They weren't here to mourn their mother. They were here to strip me bare, to take the life your mother and I built, piece by piece, until I was nothing but a shadow in the house I built with my own hands. That night, sitting in the silence of our bedroom, her clothes still hanging in the closet, her scent still clinging to the sheets, I made a decision. I would not let them devour me. I would not let them turn their mother's death into my undoing. They thought grief had made me weak, but grief had made me sharper, colder, more dangerous than ever. And if they wanted a war for the legacy their mother and I built, then I would give them one they would never forget. Grief does strange things to a man. Some drown in it, some collapse beneath it. But me, I sharpened mine into a blade. I began quietly, watching, listening. My children thought I was fading into old age, that my grief had left me too fragile to resist. They forgot I had built everything they stood on. The house, the business, the savings. I had lived long enough to know their weaknesses, their ambitions, their faults. It didn't take long to see the cracks.
Matthew came around more often, but not for me. He prowled through my study, glanced at the safe in the corner, lingered over the folders of property deeds and account ledgers. He thought I didn't notice, but every time his eyes traced those lines of ink, I knew what he wanted. Sarah wasn't much better. She always sat at the kitchen table, tablet in hand, pretending to balance numbers. "Dad, you need to modernize things. Online accounts, digital transfers. It'll be safer." Safer? For her, maybe. I saw the hunger in her eyes, the itch for control. And David, the boy couldn't even pretend. He asked me outright one evening, smirking like it was a joke. "So, when do we split the inheritance?" I looked at him, long and hard, until his smirk faltered. And then I said nothing. Silence has a way of cutting deeper than words. It was clear. My wife's death had stripped away the last of their masks. They didn't see me as their father anymore. They saw me as a roadblock, a gatekeeper between them and the fortune they thought they deserved. But they had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated me. I began planning, piece by piece. Revenge is not fire, it's ice. It takes patience, calculation, timing. I didn't want to destroy them in one stroke. No, I wanted them to feel it, like rot, spreading through wood like cracks forming in glass, until everything they thought they controlled shattered in their hands. The first step was to move the assets, quietly, carefully, without a trace. They thought they knew where the money was, where the deeds were, but they didn't know about the accounts I had kept hidden, the safes they had never seen, the lawyer who had been my friend for 30 years. While they schemed, I acted. I transferred funds, rewrote wills, moved deeds. Every move I made was like laying a trap in the dark. They didn't even notice. The second step was to turn them against each other. Wolves fight hardest when food is scarce, and I knew their greed would blind them. At dinner one night, I leaned back in my chair, fanning tiredness, and sighed. Matthew's been helping me with the accounts," I said casually. Sarah's eyes narrowed immediately. "What do you mean, helping?" "Oh," I replied, slow and careless. "He's been looking over things. I thought it best someone younger keep an eye on it." The tension that followed was delicious. Sarah's lips tightened, David snorted, and Matthew tried to look calm, but I saw the pride flicker in his eyes. Pride and the danger of being blamed. The seeds of suspicion were planted.
The next week, I reversed it. I told Matthew I'd been consulting Sarah about investments. Then I told Sarah I was considering giving David a portion of the land early. Every word was carefully placed, every hint subtle enough to sound like truth. Soon they began snapping at each other in whispers they thought I couldn't hear. My wife used to tell me I was too strict, too cold. She'd say, "They'll never forgive you if you push them too hard." She was the warmth, the bridge between me and them. Without her, the bridge was gone. All that was left was the truth. My children were vipers, and vipers deserve no mercy. But revenge, to be satisfying, must be personal. Money and property weren't enough. I wanted them to feel powerless, to understand what it meant to betray the man who raised them. So I devised a final plan, a reckoning that would leave no doubt who held the power in this house. It began with a letter. I sat at the desk late one night, pen scratching across paper, the old lamp casting shadows across the room. The words were simple, yet heavy. The legacy of this family will not be stolen. It will be tested. You have all revealed yourselves. Now you will face the consequences. I am not the old man you think I am. You will learn what it means to betray your father. I left 3 copies, one in Matthew's briefcase, One slipped beneath Sarah's tablet, one tucked into David's jacket pocket. The next morning, the storm began. Matthew confronted Sarah first, waving the note in her face. She denied writing it, accused him instead. David jumped in, laughing but nervous, suggesting they had all been tricked. The tension boiled, their voices rose until the house echoed with their bickering. And me? I sat in my chair by the fire, silent, watching the flames lick the logs, a faint smile on my lips. They had declared war on me the moment they tried to strip me bare after their mother's death. Now the war had truly begun. The letters had done their work. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to threaten. A few sentences, scrawled in my hand, had been enough to fracture the fragile trust between them. The next days were chaos. Matthew stormed into my study one morning, veins standing out in his neck. "Dad, Sarah's been lying. She's moving money. I don't know what she's told you, but you can't trust her." I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. "And why should I trust you?" I asked calmly. His mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. That afternoon, Sarah confronted me in the kitchen, eyes blazing. "Matthew is scheming behind your back. He's trying to make me look guilty so he can control everything." I just raised an eyebrow. "Interesting," I said softly. "And David? He was worse. He had never been good at hiding his fear. He laughed too loudly, spoke too quickly, avoided my eyes. I caught him one night in the study, rifling through drawers he thought were locked. When I flicked on the light, he froze like a child caught stealing candy." "Looking for something?" I asked. He stammered, Just checking if you needed help with the papers." I said nothing, only stared, until he fled the room like a whipped dog. The house, that my wife had once filled with warmth, was now thick with suspicion. Every glance, every word between them carried venom. They fought not just for my legacy, but for their survival. I had turned their greed against them, and it was tearing them apart. But I wasn't finished. I needed them broken, humbled, stripped of every illusion of control. So I escalated. I began planting evidence. A bank statement left carelessly on my desk, false numbers showing large transfers to Sarah's name. A fake deed slipped into Matthew's briefcase, giving him apparent ownership of part of the land. A forged email accidentally left open on my computer screen, suggesting David had begged me for money behind their backs. It didn't matter that none of it was real. What mattered was that they believed it. And they did. The fights grew louder, uglier. Matthew stood up so abruptly his chair toppled. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "Dad, you can't seriously think Sarah's capable of handling this. Look at her. She's been stealing for years." Sarah leapt to her feet. "Me? You arrogant bastard! You're the one forging documents. I saw the deed." David slammed his fist on the table, rattling the dishes. "Both of you shut up! You're tearing this family apart while Dad sits there watching like some kind of king on a throne." I lifted my glass of wine slowly, took a long sip, and finally spoke. You've already torn this family apart. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. They all looked at me then, not as a weak, grieving old man, but as something else. Something they couldn't control. That was the moment I knew I had them. But revenge isn't just about breaking someone. It's about leaving a scar that never fades. I needed one final act, something that would etch this lesson into their bones. So, I set the stage.
I invited them to the study late one night. The fire was burning low, the shadows long. On the desk sat 3 envelopes, sealed, one for each of them. They entered cautiously, eyes flickering between me and the letters. I said, "Sit." They obeyed, reluctantly. "These," I said, gesturing to the envelopes, "are your futures. Each contains instructions, inheritances, the truth about what will happen after I'm gone." They exchanged uneasy glances. "Open them," I ordered. Hands trembled as they tore the seals, and then, one by one, their faces changed. Matthew's letter contained nothing but a single sentence. "Arrogance blinds you. You inherit nothing until you learn humility." Sarah's, "Control is an illusion. You inherit nothing until you prove loyalty." David's, "Charm fades. You inherit nothing until you find integrity." No money, no deeds, no power, only lessons written in ink that cut deeper than steel. Their voices rose in protest, outrage spilling from their lips. "This isn't fair," Matthew roared. "You can't do this," Sarah shrieked. David cursed, fists clenched. But I only stood, calm, unmoved. "Your mother would weep to see what you've become," I said, my voice low and steady. "You thought her death gave you freedom to betray me, but it revealed the truth. You are greedy, selfish, and blind. I gave you life. I gave you everything, and now I take it back." The fire popped, sparks flying up the chimney, punctuating my words. They fell silent then, their fury drowned by the weight of my voice. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that they had lost, that the man they thought was broken had outmaneuvered them at every turn. And as they sat there, their futures slipping from their grasp, I felt the satisfaction settle deep in my bones. The war wasn't over yet, but the battlefield was mine. The night of the letters left a mark on all of us. For the first time, they stopped looking at me like prey. They looked at me like a stranger, a dangerous one. That's how I wanted it. But revenge isn't complete until the guilty choke on the weight of their own sins. And so, I decided it was time to end this game. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Sarah arrived at the house one evening, late, without calling ahead. Her face was drawn, her eyes shadowed. She walked into the study where I sat by the fire, her tablet clutched tight in her hand. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "we need to talk." I raised my brow. "Do we?" She bit her lip. "Matthew's been hiding money. I have proof. Transfers, investments. He's planning to cut David and me out completely. He's going to steal everything.
To my children, you inherit nothing. Not $1. Not 1 acre. Not one memory of this house belongs to you. You have betrayed me, betrayed your mother's memory, and betrayed yourselves. Everything we built will go elsewhere, where it cannot be poisoned by your greed. The silence that followed was deafening. Their faces drained of color, their mouths opening in shock. Matthew slammed his fist on the table. "You can't do this," he shouted. "I already have," I said calmly. Sarah's voice trembled. But, Dad, we're your children." "You were," I interrupted, my voice like steel. "But children honor their parents. They protect. They remember. You came for blood before your mother's body was even cold. You came for the spoils of a life you didn't build. That makes you strangers to me." David pushed back his chair, face twisted in rage. "You're insane. You're going to give it all away. To who?" I leaned back, letting the firelight flicker across my face. "To those who deserve it more than you. To people who know loyalty, who know sacrifice. To charities, to causes your mother believed in. To my oldest friend who stood by me when even my children did not. To anyone but you." The weight of my words crushed them. Matthew trembled with fury. Sarah sobbed quietly. David cursed and stormed out again. But none of it moved me. I had carved their greed out of my house, burned their betrayal in the fire of my vengeance. That night, when the house finally fell silent again, I sat alone at the table, staring at the empty chairs. Did it hurt? Yes. They were my children, flesh of my flesh. Once I had loved them more than life itself. But love dies when poisoned, and they had poisoned it beyond repair. Revenge, I realized, is not always about violence. Sometimes it's about cutting away the rot before it consumes everything. And that night, I cut them out of my life forever. They walked away broken, stripped of everything they thought they owned. And me, I sat by the fire, the ghost of my wife beside me, and I whispered to her, "They will never dishonor you again."
The night they left, I sat in the silence of the house, the fire dwindling to embers. For the first time since your mother's death, the silence felt different, not heavy, not suffocating, just quiet, a quiet I could live with. They didn't look back as they stormed out, not Matthew with his clenched jaw, not Sarah with her streaked face, not David with his curses still echoing in the hallway. They had come here as predators, ready to tear me apart. They left as beggars, stripped of everything they thought was theirs. And me? I felt no triumph, no glee, just peace. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and carried it to the porch. The night air was cool, the stars bright above the dark fields. I thought of your mother, of her laughter echoing in this very house, of the way she'd brush her hand across my arm when the children were young. She believed in them, even when I had doubts. She saw light where I saw shadows. But tonight proved me right. They had shown their true selves, and I had shown them that their father was not a man to be devoured. Tomorrow I will visit the lawyer. The papers are already drawn. Every cent, every acre, every possession will go to those who will honor her name. Charities she supported, causes she loved, friends who stood by us. The Thompson legacy will not be wasted on greed. As for the children, they are no longer mine. Flesh and blood they may be, but family is more than blood. Family is loyalty, sacrifice, love. They buried that with her mother when they turned on me. The house feels emptier without her, but cleaner without them. And as I finish this glass beneath the stars, I whisper to the night, they thought they could bury me with you, but I'm still here, stronger, and they will never dishonor you again. The wind stirs, and for just a moment, I swear I hear her voice in it, gentle, proud. The storm is over, and I have won.